Hello, I'm David Canfield with Entertainment Weekly. Thanks for joining us as part of the 92nd Street Y's at Home program. I'm joined today by Michelle and Robert King, creators of The Good Fight, and star Christine Baranski. Season 4, an abbreviated but still appropriately insane season 4 recently concluded. So we're going to talk about that, what lies ahead, and more. But I wanted to start talking a little bit about the present moment. Things are a little uncertain right now, a little anxious. And I've been thinking about the show in the context of that. I mean, specifically on the topic of police brutality. This has been a show that tackled it really from the very beginning. And more broadly, it's obviously been very attuned to the current moment. I just wanted to get each of your thoughts on how you're feeling right now in terms of being artists and storytellers, being a part of Hollywood, and ideas of responsibility and things like that.
I think I might be feeling more optimistic than we have a writer's room right now on a show called Evil, and the writer's room is 60% African American, and everybody, when you ask, says they're just exhausted. They're just tired. And I think it's, we just took the writer's room off this week just because it was hard to kind of get your head around the moment. And I do think it's not a really good time for me anyway to say much beyond that. I mean, I was about to say that I was feeling optimistic, but who the fuck cares what I think? I mean, it's like we're just writers trying to funnel a lot of our writer's room interest and attention into the show. So I don't know if it matters. I mean, I hate to be the first one up because I'm saying it doesn't matter, but I guess it doesn't matter because they probably said it better than I could. They're just feeling exhausted. And I think, Michelle, I'm sorry, throw it to you.
It's a peculiar time because it feels as though Hollywood discovered racism 3 weeks ago. And I do not understand this concept of wokeness. I don't understand how folks were allowed to take a nap. We've been writing about this not because we're geniuses, but because I don't understand how you watch the news and don't write about this
Right.
from the beginning of this series.
And I would say the show started as a cynical ploy. Well, how do we be different than Good Wife, but play with some of the same tropes? And it seemed like an interesting idea that Diane's character, Christine's character, Diane, would be like sent as an underdog position in another law firm. But then there was just so many opportunities to do interesting stuff about what's going on, what was then today, 2016, but has continued to be a very fascinating but awful time of the last 4 years.
But I would say as an actor, I've been grateful to be on a show in which my character is going through constant anxiety and a sense of imbalance and disorientation about the world that she's living through, and the Trump presidency, and being in an African-American law firm. And all of the characters in The Good Fight have their various levels of anxiety. And it's something we bring to our work all the time. In some ways, as emotionally dense and fraught as this moment is for all of us, I almost wish we were together as artists, as like how do we channel this? How do we show people what it's like to, try to live an aware life, a life as a lawyer, and yet try to keep your balance. There's a wonderful scene between Delroy Lindo and I where we're talking about the guardrails are off. And that was last season. And it could have been written this week. He's he's head of the law firm. And I walk into his office late at night and he pours me a drink and he just starts talking about how he used to believe in the law. He used to believe that it would somehow be okay. And now he doesn't believe it. And I counter with what I say is something about believing in love. It's not a glib scene. It's just a very short but very poignant scene. And we've been, I think, on The Good Fight, been living the American anxiety as we've, gone through these past 4 years, which is, when we were shooting the pilot when Trump won the election.
Yeah, you've been sort of steeped in that anxiety, it feels like.
Mm-hmm. It's what, I watch the news as Diane, I watch the news as Christine, and it's a parallel psyche, God knows I need my hiatus. I gotta turn everything off because we use what's going on as to play our characters.
I thought particularly of this season premiere as well, in which you imagine an alternate reality in which Hillary Clinton won the presidency and Diane is sort of wading through what that means. And there's sort of an implicit, argument about what actually would the world look like. Would it necessarily be better? Would we be having conversations that we really need to be having? Would we be outing predators and things like that? Were there any lessons learned there, guys, in the process of conceiving that episode that you're reflecting on now? Because it feels especially pertinent.
I thought the issue that seemed more impacted by that was the Me Too movement. Because the show was, the episode was starting in this wet dream of liberal fantasy of if Hillary were president, the cancer would be cured, the brain purge will be solved. And the joke was that even with all that, it would still be about travel office scandal and haircut. She got my $500 haircut. It would be all this bullshit stuff while, in fact, there were all these societal cures solved. But then the funny or the joke of it was that there are this butterfly effect of all these other things that came out of what liberals might consider a tragedy or progressives might consider a tragedy, that that Me Too wouldn't have happened. I don't think Me Too would have happened because you would have you would have felt Trump got a comeuppance for saying I'm going to grab them by the pussy, and there would have been no big marches, and there would be no sense there needs to be a comeuppance for these scoundrels. And if we, if you look at the history, Weinstein was truly a Hillary person and a Clinton person, was giving to all the right causes because he felt he could dominate and exploit the ones without voices, in this case, actresses who needed jobs and needed attention. And, that, in other words, he was doing the kind of progressive cover for what was. So anyway, to me, it's not so much of what's this moment's about. It was about what another moment was about, which was coming out of the 2016-17 moment. And I'm the one talking because I'm a man. So there you go.
No, that's all.
No women need to talk now. Shut up.
I'll ask the next question. No.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Christine.
No. I just think the volcanic anger did indeed lead to the Me Too movement, and it created this energy. And I'm thinking of the present moment, that the fury that we feel, not only the incident that happened that propelled it, but the president's tone deaf response to it has produced even more anger. And there's been sustained marching that, once again, would that have happened? People are really pushing back against just inaction or insensitivity. And maybe it takes a volcanic tsunami of anger to bring real change. And I think the Me Too movement did bring real change and continues to bring change. So let's hope that this anger will also have a creative effect, a positive effect.
Christine, do you think the Me Too movement has really made a lasting impact? I know that a bunch of these guys got pushed off the stage. Do you think it's made the lasting impact?
Well, it remains to be seen, doesn't it? I think it's had an impact, and I think it will impact the industry and how men behave. I think there will be terrible. We live in an age of the internet, and reputations can die, like it's like brush fire. I think behavior is going to be calibrated in a whole other way. Will it still exist? Will sexism still be there? Will there still be, of course there will. And then there'll be abuses on the other side, where we say, wait a minute, you're outing people. You cannot destroy reputations with no proof. There's, both sides. We'll find our balance, but I do think it will have a lasting effect, in a word, yes.
Looking ahead now to season 5, obviously this is a show that I always just think responds very quickly to current events and recent events. Do you find yourself struggling to keep up, struggling to sort of consider the shape of what a season of The Good Fight might look like in what has become such a dramatically new world?
Stephen, because
I'm going to say no. I don't think it's going to be a struggle at all. This show is utterly poised to...
You're well equipped.
I mean, these are characters that have been thinking about these issues for their entire lives. I mean, there is no universe in which they aren't coming to work and talking about this.
Yeah.
We don't have to dance around and create some plot. It's Tuesday. That's the setup for discussing what's going on.
I think we were thinking we wrote the 3 last episodes that were stopped because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I do think it will be interesting next season because we'll, in theory, be 1 month into the writing room when we find out who the next president will be. And unlike The Good Fight seems to be much more oriented towards, what is the zeitgeist based on the politics of the moment. And so I even think we're maybe thinking of an episode that is a split screen, how, it would be in a Biden universe and a Trump universe, that those would be set up side by side, but addressing the same events. So, I mean, we are kind of
and depending on who wins, we can get the other.
Yes. We're playing with the idea of possibly looking at 2 realities at the same time, because A, that's structurally fun, but B, it probably is the best example of what the moment will feel like to a lot of us, which is reality kind of has a sliding door effect when you talk about the politics.
Christine, at this point, what is it like for you to get these scripts? Do you have any idea what to expect?
No, but I always look forward to them. And I have to say, season 4, I was particularly just intrigued by where it was going. So it hurts me that we didn't finish. And in fact, I've yet to have the conversation with Robert and Michelle where I say, come on, give me the final 2. Let me know. Did I wind up in jail? What happened? How do I look in pinstripe? How do I go? I would love to know, but it's such an adventure. It always was with The Good Wife, and it's even more so with The Good Fight, because it is about the time we're living in. And I thought this season was particularly daring, not just to have it be about Trump, but who was enabling Trump and who is enabling all of these guys, these powerful, well-connected guys. And it is Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, and it goes all the way up. And we know who the Attorney General is, and we know what the president's doing. So it goes all the way up. And I love that Diane was, doing The Good Fight in that direction. I thought it was really dangerous and really intriguing.
One of the interesting wrinkles of the season premiere was, where would Diane be as a character if Hillary were president? And particularly, there's that sort of, did she bring Harvey Weinstein into the law firm, and was she excited to represent him? In terms of finding these new layers to Diane every season, you've been with this character for more than a decade now, and as all these new possibilities are thrown at you, what is that experience like building every season with this character?
It's called The Good Fight, and I don't think it was. You named the show that before Trump was elected, right?
It was
before he won the presidency, which is uncanny, because I think of Diane as a character. She's always finding the way to channel her anger into a fight of some kind, or dealing with what her present moment is, or what she's confronted with. And because of the politics of the day, because of the Trump presidency, she couldn't not be really a part of the world. It wasn't just going to work and working on court cases that were interesting. It was the world itself that she was taking on. So if anything, Diane, went from the good wife being the head of the law firm and, having to fight to keep the law firm intact, and bankruptcy issues and people leaving, or, internal struggles plus the court cases. It just blew open to be Diane as liberal feminist taking on the world, the world in which she lived.
Robert, Michelle, what about you in terms of finding new layers every year? What this season was Diane's journey for you?
I'm going to say it wasn't so much Diane's journey as much as seeing the other forces at work in the world, and then realizing, okay, I have to confront this the way that she's always felt the need to confront inequality or injustice.
I think this year was very much our reaction to the impeachment hearings, and now even more relevance. So many ways there doesn't seem to be repercussions for people who disobey the law. And then, by the way, that has a racial and classist component too, because it does seem to be people who have power or some connection to power are given kind of a free ride. So what we thought this would be about is Diane facing that dropping of the guardrails of how the law addresses equality under the law. It felt like Diane, the essence of her was, even though she was cynical in how she approached a case that she knew she wanted to win, there was this sense that at least she thought the law was benignly equal in its address of the rich and the poor, the entitled. And, she's knowing enough. She's not like an idiot. She knows, but there just seemed to be now with the current administration a sense that, that you didn't need to answer subpoenas, which, by the way, just seems like a bizarre to me, that there's no sense that our elected officials have any levers to have people answer questions that if they answer the question as a lie, they will be held up. I mean, you have to kind of look at the basis of it. And so our reasoning for this year was to kind of look at a catch-22 situation where we created a make-believe kind of, not a law, but some kind of card that you could hand people that, no, I'm one of the club members. I don't need to stand behind the red velvet rope. Right. I can get past it. And that doesn't, and now you can't do anything to harm me, you judge, anyone, because this is a club. I'm in a club. I don't need to do what those schmucks over there are doing. They're the ones who have to stand in line to get in the club and prove, that they're handsome enough or rich enough to get in. So it felt like that was what was going on a little bit with impeachment, but a little obviously what's going on now with a lot of these people just getting out of jail. The problem is you talk about serious things and you laugh at the same time, because it is not the way society was built to be. And you kind of laugh at the way this plays as high school or plays as like the nightclub Friday night, because it does have that feel to it of like who is in and who is out.
It does feel like high school. That's a good.
Yeah, it feels like you never get away from high school, either in Hollywood or Washington, D.C. or Wall Street.
You're either in the clique or you're not in the clique. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you here or are you not? And if you're not, then you can't get all the advantages of membership.
Except unfortunately the C students are in charge.
The key point there, I would argue. Does it ever get to the point though where you feel like you have to tune it out a little bit to because it does get so overwhelming? I mean, just as a casual observer of the world speaking.
Yeah.
Well, I will say one thing, it would be lovely to tune out is what's going on with the pandemic right now, because there's a lot of pressure for Hollywood to open up again. So the mayors and the governors in both states, or all the states, because we have 3 shows in production, one that got interrupted, The Good Fight, one in New Orleans, Your Honor, and the other is in New York also, Evil. And there's just a lot of pressure, and that you kind of have to tune out, because it does seem like the medical professionals have to give us more clear cut. I understand they can't get their hands around the virus completely, but whatever they do know, they have to communicate without any political bias. They have to tell us what's going on so that we can make decisions as business people and as creative people what we should do. And Michelle and I are kind of having to deal with that on a daily basis, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is that it becomes incumbent upon us as producers to put health and safety first. You would like to feel that you are partnered either with government officials or company officials who are putting the same emphasis on that.
I had a talk with my manager yesterday about this issue and how does one go back to work. And I'm supposed to start work on the HBO show, The Gilded Age, and shoot that until Good Fight begins. But that was held up. I would have been in production for that now. And I live here with my little tribe of 3 grandsons and my son-in-law and my daughter. And we've been, quarantined. And she said, you realize if you start work on The Gilded Age and you're in New York and you're working, you can't go and see your family.
Right.
And that nothing struck me more profoundly than I can't on weekends go and see them, and they'll be in school by September. So they're exposed and I'm exposed, and I have a professional obligation to stay healthy, and they're little children, and I'm also over 60. So it's just all of these things are, so yes, I agree. It is nice sometimes to just have a couple of rosés and just forget about it, but or something stronger.
Or something stronger.
I'm sure that wasn't the point of your question. It just seems to be on our mind at the moment.
No, absolutely. I mean,
but it is hard to tune out because it does. My point is, it becomes so personal. It becomes so specific that it has to do. My daughter went to several protests. My younger daughter went to 3 different protests, and she was going to come over for a hamburger the other night. And I had to get on the phone with my doctor and say, wait a minute, she was in crowds. They were wearing masks, but they weren't 6 feet apart. And she had to eat 6 feet apart and wear masks except to eat. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is affecting us at at a micro level.
Yeah, at every level through to the work as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, the show is impacted by it, and having to end it early, thinking about the sort of, the way you had to be flexible to find an ending. I know you'd done a little bit of episode 8, but for the most part, you had 3 episodes undone. How is that? How are you reflecting on season 4 as a whole, given that it did feel a little incomplete, particularly with a couple of main cast members, Cush Jumbo and Delroy Lindo, announced to be leaving at least full time after season 4?
I would say creatively, it was unfortunate, but I'll speak personally. What was so much more important is that everyone remains safe and healthy. Yeah. And so we didn't shut down a moment too soon. And that, had we for some idiotic reason chosen to remain on a set when people were starting to get ill all around us and, gotten a more perfect ending to a season of The Good Fight, that would be inexcusable for me.
What we decided to do is Michael Zinberg was the director of the 8th episode, and Fred Murphy was the director of the 7th episode. We had shot 4 days of the 8th episode, and we took 3 of the scenes, the Julius Cain scenes, played by Michael Boatman. He was to kind of suggest where we were heading with this Memo 618 plot, which is it really starts having a day-to-day repercussions on our cast or our characters. By the end of the seventh episode, so we put those scenes. I mean, you'll notice. I mean, Dan Lawson, who does the wardrobe, must be like going crazy because suddenly Christine's outfit moves from episode 7 outfits to episode 8 outfits. But you know, it was.
Sorry, Christine.
We're so sorry to you, Christine, too. But it seemed important to suggest where this was headed. Even though it was weird. And the episode that ends it is weird. What felt right was to cap it with a very provocative image as the ending, but also suggest that this was this Memo 618-ness of things. This idea that rich have a get out of jail free card seems to have real world repercussions, and that seems more important to me than all the Netflix documentaries in the world about Epstein. It seemed more important to see how he kind of worked into a power structure that enabled him, just as Trump, by the way, is enabled over decades. There are all these progressives coming out against Trump now. Excuse me, where were you 30 years ago? Where were you 20 years ago? Where were you 10 years ago? So again, it seems like there's a power structure in place in New York, let's just say it, but also DC, where people who are now putting on a progressive face for things were pushing these people forward, as awful as they were, because these were not people who changed overnight. Epstein always was raping young women and doing it often with people of other power and other political bents, was doing that over decades. And now was just kind of like, accepted in the power structure because, again, he was in the right club. So it did seem only appropriate, even though we thought it was our provocative episode. Ever since season 2, we've been doing what we call our PP tape episode. Episode that is just trying to be a bit atrocious. Last season, it was Melania divorce.
Oh, yes.
Each year there's a little bit like going off, and this is our episode where hopefully you get the audience going, are they really going there? So yes, that it was fine that it was the last episode because it summed up what we thought was this middle point about Memo 618.
Yes. I thought if you had to end on any episode, that would be the one.
Because everything else would be, the next episode was going to be about the cult at the Office of Legal Counsel. I don't even know. We might have ended with a sheep being slaughtered at the Office of Legal Counsel if we continued in the which would be equally absurd.
Fitting in its own way, I suppose. It does bring up an interesting question, though, because it did feel like a very appropriate ending, given everything. But there is still that balance to strike between, as you mentioned, the very real horrible things that Epstein did and sort of parroting it or finding the absurd in it. The good fight has always struck such a tricky, precise tonal balance that I think can vary pretty wildly from episode to episode. How have you found that rhythm over time?
Well, you've had the best response when we were asked by an interviewer, why are you able? Well, why do you go after these people? Why do you say these things? And Michelle said,
I don't know what I said.
You said because CBS lets us.
Oh.
So I do think the structural changes, the structural deviations, the pivots there very quickly from musical something or other to animation to we're only doing that because they say yes and they sign the checks. I think we're slightly trying to bring attention to otherwise to a site that might be overlooked and a show that might be overlooked. And feel like we're entertaining an audience.
Ourselves.
An audience that is probably open to surprises. I find as much as streaming seems to be a niche and has amazing work, Russian Doll, other things. Not Russian Doll. What did I call it? But a lot of these Netflix shows that are often good, there's often a sense of lacking in surprise. Because at a certain point when they start the show, it has an expected rhythm and expected sense of where it's going. So where is our Breaking Bad? Where's our next Breaking Bad? Where's our next Sopranos? The show that just kind of constantly surprises you week to week. Michelle and my only attempt at that, and Christine's, is to structurally change things up and try to surprise the audience with ways of telling a story, not just the content of the story itself.
I know I'm so often writing to Michelle, like, he did this or he said that or this just happened. You can't write this stuff. Like, no, we actually are. I mean, reality is now so absurd that how do you so we mix it up. I love that Robert and Michelle. I mean, I love the songs, I love the music, I love the the musical asterisk, sort of the Jonathan Coulton. We're doing jazz riffs and yet it feels okay because life itself, what we're seeing on television, is mind-boggling. That you think, is this actually America? Did he actually say that? Is this really happening? So our show, I think, just tries to, surf that.
It looks like it's very fun to play too, Christine.
I can't tell you how delighted I was with the first episode of this season. It's my favorite episode that I ever did in 11 years because it was funny, it was audacious, it was so thought-provoking. What if Hillary won the presidency? And for the first third of it, everything's like, oh my God, this is the polar bears are back in the rainforest and cancer and Merrick Garland and Elizabeth Warner. And oh my God. And then she has to represent Harvey Weinstein. She's like, what the
Yeah.
So it's funny and it's the best of what I think the Kings do.
What a question for each of you. What would you say is the wildest thing that you think The Good Fight has done so far?
Well, it's probably about what we were going to do in the 9th episode.
Oh.
We were going to go into the Office of Legal Counsel, and we go down a hallway that's darker and darker, and we get to the end, and it's like in Apocalypse Now when they come to Marlon Brando, and he's putting water on his head, and it's Bill Barr. And Bill Barr is telling us basically why we have to shut the fuck up about what we've seen. This is to Sarah Steele and to Nyambi. They're kind of reached the end of the river. And it would have been
like they walked into and the Kings was there. This is Bill Barr.
And there are these sheep being slaughtered about the cult of Trump. And they walk down this hall to I only say this because I'm betting that Bill Barr will not be Attorney General. But the whole idea of this bizarre sense of law as religion, law as an obsession with personality, obsession with the cult of personality was what we were presenting at the Office of Legal Counsel. But, there you go. That was probably the most audacious thing we thought.
Yeah, I have visions of how they were going to have to film that.
Or how legal at CBS was going to have to deal with it. But that was going to be in episode 9.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So now we can't do that? We can't ever do that because
what?
Now we can't do it because you've already outed the
episode. I know, but maybe that's
that's not going to be the issue. Let us hope that Bill Barr will not be.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Oh God.
So you guys feel comfortable talking about things you had in the works that maybe you won't get to do anymore?
I think what was interesting about Memo 618 was how it undercut narrative. So many of our, you talk to almost any defense attorney or prosecutor, one of the reasons they probably went into the law is because they read or watched To Kill a Mockingbird, usually watched. And the difficulty of that is as much of an injustice as it was, there was a sense, there was a game to be played. There was a net and 2 tennis rackets. They were hitting over the net in the law. And what we thought was interesting to have a last case that undercut everything we understood about the narrative potential of law because the guardrails were gone. In other words, if you can't have a game of law or justice, then narrative goes away too. I mean, then it's just power. It's just power applied. So we thought it was interesting to play one of these, A Few Good Men cases, or these cases that you probably know through, you're watching of movies or reading of books or watching of TV shows, and really show the way that dropping of guardrails keeps it from being anything other than an exercise of power.
Scary.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the default reaction.
God.
How long do you guys see a show like this going at this point? You're 4 seasons in. It feels like it keeps getting, because it always meets the moment. It feels like there's no necessary expiration date.
When things finally get really normal and like everything is fine, then we'll probably so what do you say, guys? Oh,
A big picnic.
I think we could be around a long time because things ain't going to settle down anytime soon. As long as the Kings want to write it, I'll do it, because I find it just so fascinating to play a character that's just surfing the waters as I surf the waters as a liberal. I'm also of Diane's political persuasion. And it's just wonderful to go to work thinking I'm of the moment. I'm bringing what I watch, what I feel into work with me. And of course, we have such wonderful actors, and we have such a multicultural set. We're like an example of how good it can be, how well it can work, I think. I don't mean to gloat, but I really think this is an exceptional show and an exceptional group of people, and that includes the writer, the writer's room, the cast, the crew. Everybody is, just really singular, wonderful people.
Does it feel therapeutic at all to do it?
I find it therapeutic. It's a way for me to vent anger and get it out there. I can't imagine being on some, vapid sitcom now, and there'd be such a disconnect between what's actually going on and then going to work and just, doing, I don't know, some grumpy grandmother or something. I mean, I get to be Diane, the fighter, the lawyer.
And being in the writer's room is absolutely group therapy. I mean, the first hour of the day is typically spent talking about the news. That it's an incredibly smart writers, very well informed, constantly consuming the news. So every day it is what's going on. They see virtually every show on Broadway and off Broadway. And so there's a constant cultural conversation that results in episodes. It's not just enjoying ourselves, it's also the fuel of the show.
That's where the slave play episode came from, which is a conversation among the writers about seeing the slave play.
Wow. How have those conversations evolved between the writers and the pandemic and the planning and discussing, current events?
I mean, we have only kept in communication with folks over email just because we like one another. We're not currently in season with the writers, so we haven't been together over Zoom at this point.
And you sort of must have produced the finale, at least within these conditions. What was that experience like?
Hard. It was. It was difficult because it was everybody working at home, and there's nothing quite like editing an episode. The editor is working off a screen like we're working on right now, and they're putting their laptop on their desk, working from home, and then put their iPad in front of their laptop, which broadcasts through FaceTime the visual to me, editing at my home. And so there was this crazy kind of Rube Goldberg, okay, could you stop? Could you go back? Could you, and I think it was difficult because we had not shot some scenes that were essential to the last episode. So some were done with visual effects. Inserts, for example, we hadn't shot the inserts yet. Those are the little close-up of little pieces. And given that the last episode was so investigative heavy, that's usually where inserts matter most, because you need to see, something on a chalkboard. You need to see something that is handed to somebody else. So that was hard, but also we didn't get some scenes of Sarah Steele and Yambi down in the Virgin. I mean, what was supposed to be the Virgin Isles, but we've been shooting down in the Florida Keys. So there were some scenes that we just had to cut around. So that was difficult. Not an ideal experience. If we knew we were going to end up there, we would do it better. But we're not. Did not.
Yeah, you couldn't have had any idea at all.
Well, when we shut down, we were cast and crew. The idea was we were going to shut down for 2 weeks, which seemed an eternity when there's such a momentum. Right. 2 weeks is like the Christmas hiatus or something, and that seemed like but we didn't in any way anticipate that it would be months and that the economy would completely tank and everybody'd go home and disperse. And so, none of this was anticipated.
Well, we are doing this virtually through the 92nd Street Y, which means there's no literal audience, but we did solicit some questions over Twitter, and many came in. Here are a couple of our favorites for you guys. We're going to start with one for Christine. Was there a moment when you were surprised by Diane's decision or action across the good fight?
Well, I would have to say it's when it was written in the script that Diane has a one-night stand with the bartender, because I have such a deep feeling for Kurt McVeigh. That relationship has been so rich, so authentic, so adult. And it felt like a real betrayal. And I thought, this is going to upset people who watch. It will be upsetting. How do I do that? So we had phone calls about it. I mean, it's the dearest, closest relationship that I have in the show with my husband. And I've always just been so protective of it and wanting it to be, there's a great feeling between us as actors. So that felt very real to me. It felt like a real infidelity. It was like, oh my God. But, it was necessary to the plot line. But I would say that one. Yeah.
Well, we actually have a related question there then. Do you have a favorite scene with Diane and Kurt?
I love them all. I particularly love when he reveals to me that he's working for the Trump boys. And then I bang my head against the wall.
That's a favorite for sure.
It's so funny, and I think he's been back with one of his Fox blondes, and I'm all upset. And then it's head spinning where the trajectory of that scene goes, and then it winds up being quite funny. But there is an early scene that I saw recently in some film clips of mine, where I'm at his place where he keeps all his guns, whatever you call it, a ballistic studio. What do you call that? Garage? I don't know. And he's showing me how to shoot a rifle. And so it's the first time his arms are around me, and it's shot where we're just cheek to cheek. And it's early in the relationship, and I say to him, I can't sleep with you. I'm your lawyer. And it's watching that scene, I realize there really is a wonderful chemistry between us. Sexual chemistry and that kind of thing is really hard to act. It's got to really be there. And I feel so blessed. I can't say enough about Gary Cole, because we've had that all these years since The Good Wife. Yeah. We've had this, and it's something that's just very special.
Christine, did you know you had the chemistry from the beginning?
Well, I remember when he came in and he made me laugh, this cowboy and all. But no, it grew. But I remember that scene, seeing that scene on film. I didn't realize it when I was doing it, but watching it on film, I thought, "Whoa, that's sexy."
with the chemistry in a play, are you aware of the chemistry being different in a TV show or movie than it is in a theater?
You know, the camera's wonderful in that regard. It can smell that sort of thing. It can smell sex. The camera can smell it somehow. You know when actors, you know that thing that's happening. And it's, as I say, it's something really hard to fake. I think it's easier maybe on stage because actors who have hated each other have gone on stage and they love scenes. I think it's really because it's skin. It's, you know, it's this. It's so revealing.
Well, here's a thought experiment. If you were to had Gary Cole in a stage play, do you think the same thing would come through, or no? It's only because of the closeness of the camera.
Well, now that I've worked with him all this time, I think it would be there. That simpatico, but he's a wonderful film actor because he's so economical. He does virtually, you can't tell he's doing anything. and yet you see the scenes between us and there's just such a depth and such a richness to his masculinity. He's, you know, the Kings wrote that wonderful speech, What Happened to All the Real Men? What happened to the real guys? Which I actually say to Gary's back. And Gary is a man's man. He's a cowboy. And that I love that monologue, which is what happened to men who did, you know, who weren't Donald Trump and his sons, you know, who didn't wear fancy cologne, who took responsibility. Yeah. But we've got that, and it's something that's hard to come by. I'm sure you'd find, wouldn't you agree, Robert and Michelle? It's very hard to cast. I mean, I love men, but it's hard to find actors who are just, you know, the guys.
Yeah, completely. And you kind of, I mean, Delroy is one of them because, and also he takes control. He takes that
kind of quiet authority that, you know, Robert Mitchum, the Burt Lancaster, the Paul Miller. What happened to those guys? You know, women need those guys to react to, but I'm lucky because I've got Gary.
Robert and Michelle, did you guys see that between Christine and Gary immediately?
It worked beautifully from the beginning. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, part of the problem, it was in the 22 episode a year time.
Right.
You can't even, you're not even sure if you got two shoes that match on. And so there was this sense like, oh my God, okay, thank you. We don't need to recast and we don't need to re-edit. And okay, let's keep moving. We got to go to the next one. But clearly we must have, because right around then was the same time we cast Alan Cumming as the
that's right.
And so as Eli Gold, and there was a sense like, okay, sometimes you just stumble your way into kismet. You know, you're just okay, and you're not even aware of it at the time. It's just like that.
Yes, and Carrie Preston came in to do a quirky role, and she became oh my God, bring on more Carrie Preston. You know,
that's right.
Yeah, we've had quite a few of those.
Oh, yeah, you've had a lot.
And by the way, the more episodes you do, the more chances you have to just take a chance on an actor and just like, okay, well, that is
Michael J. Fox. What were the chances? Yeah. He would become this beloved staple of the show. I mean, I loved my episodes with him in this season. He's just, you know, he's just a great human being, great actor.
And we're very lucky with Mark Sachs, our casting director, who goes to every show and sees everything and knows everybody and knows what everyone is doing, and keeps all these wonderful people coming onto the show.
It's going to be an opportunity if we go back, I must say, because the Broadway community is going to be shut down for much longer, and we are going to have our pick of the creme de la creme, and I hope we take full advantage.
Yeah, you guys have always taken from Broadway, great Broadway names.
Yeah, it's a revolving door. It's like a theatrical repertory company, I think, but The Good Fight. Yeah,
definitely. Next question's for Robert and Michelle. It sort of echoes what we were talking about at the top of this, but given that The Good Fight is one of the few shows that addresses racism in such a direct and intelligent way, how does the construction of the storylines and plot lines work for you as white writers? Obviously, a writer's room is more than just its creators, but beyond that, even.
I would say we rely on the African American writers in the writer's room to one of the writers who was on Good Wife very early was Courtney Kemp, who now runs Power. And she said something that, she hated sometimes being the writer in the writer's room who was the Blackopedia, the person who described race to you. And yet, there was a sense you, needed people to gut check you about what you were writing about, given that it was an African-American firm. And the other thing is you wanted people who provoked the conversation. The only thing I think that Michelle and I offer is to try to bridge two premises so that they're less earnest. So Davida Scarlett, who wrote the episode this year about reparations, which was cool because it was a debate that among African-American characters about the possibility of political need for reparations. The only thing I would say that we pat ourselves on the back for, and not even that much, is combining that with a premise about the Walter Mosley being brought into HR about saying the F-word with the Star Trek. So by combining those two premises, you could do all the interesting content about reparations and still kind of had it be an interesting premise also about how African Americans were treated in an all-white firm or a all-white overlord firm. In this case, this boss firm that is mostly white. So it was. I kind of think that when you combine two premises, you keep them from being earnest. You keep the audience a little ajar, like which one are we really talking about now? So Davida is this amazing writer on her staff who basically is grabbing hold of the system of this good fight premise and really making it very exciting and cool and interesting. And I'm thrilled to think how she's going to handle all the things that come down next season after.
But also I would add, one should never have one of anything in a writer's room, including one African-American writer, one gay writer, one female writer, because no one should have to be the voice of any community. And that is included on The Good Fight. There is not just one of anything in the writer's room. And we benefit from the characters. If you want to address what people are talking about now, that's going to happen because of the characters. We have 8 regular characters. 5 of them are African American. So we benefit from the fact that one character isn't forced to be a mouthpiece for a group. People are going to disagree with each other, and hopefully one loves all these characters. And so as a result, one can listen to points of view either that you agree with or that you disagree with, but understand the characters you love will have different points of view.
Next question for Christine. How different is it for you, this is the question's words, to finally be the leading character as opposed to the supporting cast member in terms of taking on the assumptions of a lead role?
It wasn't a huge leap because I was working with Robert and Michelle throughout.
Right.
It's a privilege and responsibility to be suddenly number one, because I think that person sets the tone for the set, and there's a responsibility there, which I take very seriously in terms of never making people wait, knowing my work, always being gracious, welcoming the guest actors, or being a spokesperson or a liaison. If there's a level of discomfort for any reason, going to the producers or to the writers and just, taking the temperature of the room. It's a higher responsibility. But I will say this, there's another thing that's rather lovely about it, is I waited a long time in my career to finally be number one. I was finally number one on the call sheet in my 60s.
Yeah.
And I was playing a female character of that age who is, a dignified, well-educated, powerful woman. And I feel there's a metaphor there of, oh, yeah, it's time for women to be number one on the call sheet. Isn't this exactly the right moment? I mean, it was sort of, it almost happened with Hillary, but
Yeah.
I see all around me women that are just the most extraordinarily capable. There was a New York Times piece on the 3 most effective world leaders in terms of coping with COVID. And it was the Prime Minister of Denmark, Germany, and New Zealand, and they're all women. It is time for women to assume that position. And there are so many of us who are well over 40, 50, 60. It's time.
Well, can we also say, Christine, not only are you a powerful woman in the show, you're a sex object with the
Well, if you have anything to do with it, you have no idea how much talcum powder it takes to get a latex cat suit on.
You get to do everything.
I wouldn't let Gary Cole see me. I said, you just I want you to be stuck. But it took a village to get that thing on me. The idea that Diane just went quickly in the bathroom, put on the cowboy suit, and came out with the rifle. I mean, I had 3 or 4 people stuffing me into it with the talcum powder. And that's not leather, that's latex. And I guess you really have to kind of want that sort of thing because it's really not comfortable.
You know that's going to be the quote used when they pull.
Oh, that's our headline.
There you go.
What's the headline?
Takes a village to put on the cat suit.
That's got to be one up there on your wildest memories for the good fight. Well, maybe not. There's been a lot.
I mean, who does that? Only Robert and Michelle would, do that. I said, "Are you kidding?" I was like, "All right, let's go for it." When that's the relationship we have, I said, "I don't know, but okay." And I thought it turned out fine. I thought it made it
fine. It turned out great. I love that episode.
Yeah,
I love that episode.
Yeah. It looked great. All right, we'll wrap with a more retrospective question for Robert and Michelle. There were so many characters in The Good Wife. How did you know Diane's story was the one that wasn't finished yet? What kind of conversation was that, and how do you feel now?
I'll say I feel like a genius now.
I think many would agree.
We could not have done better than to look. We always knew it would be very fortunate to continue working with Christine. But Diane is exactly the character you want to see walking forward into this world. So I could not be more thrilled.
I think there was an episode called Alienation of Affection, which I probably could tell you what season is because of the number of words in title. 3rd season. It must have been the 3rd season, where Christine Baranski was put in charge of like David Lee and maybe Alan Cumming. And there was this little sense of like being in control of these adult babies. And
I remember having to lecture them like I was, yes, absolutely.
I've been trying to take them in control. Like, I want you all to shut up. You're going to do this and you're going to do that. And what was great was it was controlling, powerful, and funny. And I do think one of the things that lost often in drama is the essential nature of comedy with drama, which David Chase always had with, Sopranos, Vince Gilligan always had with Breaking Bad. But I think some of the modern streaming shows often thinks of drama as you have to put on a serious scolding face. And I thought what was always funny about Christine, which you obviously see with the first episode this season, is comedy is 2 seconds away from drama. And when you're in the midst of drama, that you can do something comic, I think is a talent that is to be cherished wherever you find it. If it's, in whatever actor you can find, whether character you can find. And I do think in that moment of alienation of affection, there was this sense of, I don't even remember, Christine, why your character was in charge, but you were in charge.
But I always thought she was the grown-up in the room. Yes. I always thought she was the one, which is why her unraveling during the Trump era has been so
Yes.
interesting to watch, because when you watch the sanest person in the room go crazy, you know things are bad. So psilocybin and martial arts and all, but yes, I quite agree. I think you sensed early on that I had a deep laugh and a sense of humor, and it's always there. And I'm very happy to know as an actress that if I want to access that, the writing is there to allow for that smile or that moment or the lifted eyebrow or the sense of irony. The humor is, it's part of the undertone, sometimes the overtone of a scene.
And I would say that our writer's room and us don't tend to write jokes. We tend to write like room for the writer to add their comedy on it, and which Delroy has been doing and Audra has been doing so great this year, and Kush, is finding, okay, where is the comedy within a line that seems fairly straight? You never tend to write parenthetical, sarcastic, or ironic, but that is in fact often the intent.
But Robert, you did script it that when I found out that Kurt was working for the Trumps, that I go to the wall and bang my head. And he directed the episode and he said, could you bang your head a little harder? And the harder I banged, the more Robert laughed.
It was a very Mike Nichols moment, obviously. Mike Nichols Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate going to the corner and like, oh. Fuck.
And so when I found out I was representing Harvey Weinstein, we have a moment, Brooke said, bang your head again.
Well, here's to many more years of head banging and unraveling and P-tape episodes and all the rest. Thank you so much, Robert King, Michelle King, Christine Baranski. All 4 seasons of The Good Fight are now available on CBS All Access. Thanks so much for watching. I'm David Canfield, Entertainment Weekly.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. Talk to you soon.
Yes, please.